Welcome, everyone. This is a live video broadcast as part of our Living in Oneness Summit program. It's great to be with you today. I'm Steve Farrell, the Worldwide Executive Director for Humanities Team. We're going to be covering a lot of valuable ground today. James O.D. is our special guest during today's program. I know you're going to enjoy the program here for the next 60 minutes or so. A quick introduction to Humanities Team as we get started. In Humanities Team, we see there is only one presence, the divine, and see that we're all emanations of the divine. It's true for each of us in all of life. Doesn't matter how far our lives may be from reflecting this truth, it's still true. Our invitation is to live in communion with the divine and be an authentic expression of the presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. We don't need to be perfect or even excellent. We're invited to simply receive God's love and be an expression of that, each in our own way, to the best of our ability. We can be intentional about this, so we live this way each day. When we do this together, we create the world that we know is ours. Okay, concerning today's program with James O.D., I want to invite you to share your questions and comments by placing them in the chat window here on Zoom. This is a 60-minute program. The sooner you bring in your comments and questions, the better, so we can be sure to get to them. Things that come in the last 10 minutes, we tend not to be able to get to. So go ahead and begin sharing comments and questions now if you like. I'd also like to extend an invitation to those of you who receive value from our weekly programming. Our programs cost us about $1,000 to produce each week, and we provide these programs free to the public. If you find value in our programming, we invite you to go to humanitiesteam.org, our website. We're a 501c nonprofit. At the top of the Humanities Team website, you'll see a yellow donate button. You can click there to contribute so that we can keep these programs free to the public and also the archived links free to people that are signing up as registrants. We're also placing a link here in the window to make it convenient for you to contribute if you like. And thanks in advance for your generosity. Okay, let's bring in our special guest. I'm going to read a brief introduction for my special guest now. James O.D. is the author of The Conscious Activist, Cultivating Peace, and other acclaimed works, including Soul Awakening Practice that we're going to be talking about today. He has taught peace building to over 1,000 students in 30 countries. He has also conducted frontline social healing dialogues around the world. He is a member of the Evolutionary Leaders group and on the advisory board of the Peace Alliance and Kosmos Journal. James also mentors emerging leaders. He is an Honorary Fellow of the Laszlo New Paradigm Institute. James is both an activist and a mystic. And welcome to the Living in Oneness Summit, James. Great to be with you.
Great to be with you again, Steve.
Total pleasure. And James is up in Crestone, Colorado, just a beautiful spot. It's a very spiritual community. I know Crestone likes keeping its community small, but if you're in Colorado, you might want to get out that way. It's a beautiful place. And James is coming in live today from Crestone. I'm here in Boulder, Colorado, so we're only about 2.5 hours apart. James, we'll jump right in because we've got a lot of ground to cover. And I want to talk in the introduction I was sharing about this beautiful book, which I love, Soul Awakening Practice. And I know Kosmos Journal voted it one of the best books in 2017. I love it. I think it's absolutely a book for the library. So James, maybe we can jump in and talk about the book. And just first at the very top level of, what was your inspiration for writing this book?
Well, thank you, Steve. The inspiration really came as part of the subtitle of the book, which talks about prayer, contemplation, and action. How do we bring together the inner and the outer? How do we really connect to Source and get that guidance that we need, build that inner life, commune with the infinite, and get our fingers dirty in planting the seeds of the new humanity and of recognizing the time we live in. So the book, The Conscious Activist, was also about activism and mysticism and how they can be complementary. We have a whole movement now that's emerging, that's soulfully engaged in the world, that doesn't hop on the pillow and say, I'm taking the transcendental express train out of here because this world's so filthy, so corrupt, so wounded. I'm going to heavenly places. But rather that we bring down those heavenly places into earth, into our relationships, into working with the world. And I'd like to begin talking about something that really, really hit me very deeply a few months ago in this regard. And that was 16 Chinese students, Zen students from Shanghai and from other parts of China, came to walk through what we call the Camino de Crestone. This is a program of pilgrimage, really, to take you to the holy sites in Crestone, of which there are so many. And I can tend to be the last stop on the Camino. And they came, and I was telling them a story from my peace work. And something happened, Steve. It was so heart-opening. I was sharing with them the story of Francis McAneny, who I had met in Northern Ireland. And during the workshop, the break in my workshop, I went up to her and I said, Francis, how did you get engaged in reconciliation work in Northern Ireland? And she said, well, one day I was walking to the office and a shooter from up above shot me, and I was very, very badly wounded and taken to the hospital. And of course she lost a lot of blood. And when she finally came around, she had that sense that it was probably the end. There was that atmosphere of, we're trying to make her as comfortable as possible under the circumstances. And then a couple of days later, the doctor came to her and said, look, we've consulted with every specialist we know. You have a bullet lodged right next to your aorta. We can't operate on you. She felt like it was a death sentence. And then a few weeks later, the doctor came to her and said, well, Francis, you're not dead and you're still going. You're going to have to get on with the rest of your life. She said, with a bullet next to my heart? How can I live with a bullet next to my heart? And yet, out of her own hurt and wounding and rage, she turned towards reconciliation and doing reconciliation work. And as I finished this story, one of the Chinese students, a young man in his 30s, started crying deeply. And I realized that he understood the significance of this story. So the translator was translating for me, and I said, yes, indeed, we on planet Earth have been shot, we've been wounded. It's like Francis's story is a symbol for what is happening on planet Earth at this time. The bullet has gone in. The bullet has gone into Mother Nature in a very profound way. She's badly wounded. And yet we are calling each other in this program and in this work to step up and to create a new scenario for a scenario of oneness for the human family. And at that point, everybody was crying. And the translator turned to me, crying, and she said, listen to this, Steve. She said, These are tears of beauty. I want you just to stop for a moment and think, what did she mean? Tears of beauty. Why tears of beauty? It struck me so deeply. Not tears of joy, not tears of happiness, but tears of beauty. And those tears of beauty represent the bitter, the wound, and the beauty and the truth. The bitter and the sweet, I call it, coming together, seeing the wound, not lying, not distorting the truth, seeing that we are deeply wounded in so many ways. Tens of millions of refugees, massive destruction of the oceans and the forests. We could go on. And yet, in that, there is the beauty of the human rising out of the ashes of that level of wounding and destruction and say, no, we have a new way, we have a new path. And maybe we can only see it in glimpses, but it's coming towards us. And those 16 students and I, their teacher was Deng Deng. I don't know if we have that picture of Deng Deng to share.
Yeah, we'll put that up. Thank you. Yeah, remarkable.
Yes, there she is. And her name in Chinese means light, light. And she said, this has been one of the most beautiful days to be with you and to share. And so that is the context for me of soul awakening. That we awaken on planet in this lifetime and commit ourselves to the profound work of giving birth to a new humanity.
Beautiful. And again, you saw, we just had a slide there with this book. I've got it, Soul Awakening Practice. It's a book for the library. We're going to just talk about the treasure in this book, and we're going to end the program with the Soul Awakening Prayer. So just stay tuned for that. We're going to bring that in near the end of the program. Thank you also to viewers. We've got a bunch of questions and comments that are pouring in. We're going to be sure to get to those. Thank you so much. James, let me bring in just something that I didn't even get a chance to mention this when we were starting the program, but I thought it'd be a valuable thing to bring in because it talks to the need, for this book and this practice. Just 2 days ago, and on page A2 of the New York Times, and then on the front page of the business section in the New York Times, it talked about technology leaders, executives, entrepreneurs, and you of course come from the Bay Area. I do too, so we're well familiar with that environment. And the article talks about how there's all of this material success, but the people are actually in crisis. And they're in crisis because they've put years and years and years of their life into material reward, just essentially ignoring their soul. And so, maybe you could talk a little bit about that. Again, I know you're familiar with that from your own Bay Area work.
Right. I think it's a constant weaving work that, we go into the world and we try to make a difference. And then, all of these technologies can serve, or as we've seen, they can get corrupted and manipulated and people get confused. And so we have to go in, and it's that inner-outer circuitry that is so essential. And understanding and realizing the map of the journey, that the soul itself, what is the soul? But that drop, that essence from the vast original consciousness descending through nature, through the whole process of evolution, and experiencing the conflicts of the world, the realities of the world, existence itself, and moving inexorably towards opening, towards enlightenment, towards truth. And we're all learners. You know, we've all come through the evolutionary process, stumbling, bumbling, hurting, wounded, whichever ways we come through those lessons. We are, as our DNA points out, we share our DNA with all of life, with the trees, with the plants, with the animals, because that's the journey we took as souls through that process. And then there comes a lifetime in that journey when we start to go through many human lives of reincarnation and learning. There comes a lifetime when the pivot of going out always into the world shifts, and we start to go in and see what the reality is, where the make-believe is in our world, where the mirages are, where the illusions are, and we face the inner truth. So truth in soul awakening is so essential because we see the truth of who we are. I say to people, relax into the truth of your own pure, beautiful, peaceful nature, because that's who you are in essence. You have a lot of stuff to deal with on the surface, but this sense of the soul's journey and then the communion of souls, the gathering of souls, the powerful experience of souls waking up together, waking each other up, calling each other out, saying, let's do it for real this time, is the sense that I have that below the radar screen of all of the technology and all of the media, there is this force gathering, and it's a soul awakening force.
Yes, it is. It's and it is our time. It is our time, and it's such a beautiful book. I mentioned Kosmos Journal calls it one of the best books of 2017. It's definitely a book for the library. And James has a Facebook page. If you haven't friended him on Facebook, you should, because he brings in discussion about the book and lots of relevant things that are happening in the world, including a picture of Dang Dang that was beautiful when she was up in Crestone. So you might want to check that out. James is also, as you know, has been just a wonderful supporter of Global Oneness Day over the years. He was on this panel during Global Oneness Day 2017. And of course, Global Oneness Day, and for that matter, Humanities Team, our focus is awakening oneness in ourselves and in the world. And this book, Soul Awakening Practice, is just such a beautiful book that really talks about how we awaken ourselves to being what an emanation of the divine, and how we come into that fully as our own presence of that. One of the things that's said in the book, it says it's an unapologetic instruction manual, an unapologetic instruction manual to establish a new consciousness of unity and connection. And maybe we can just talk a little bit about that here, James. Of course, that comes back to your inspiration, but at the top level, forest view, so to speak, that's kind of what we're doing here, huh? And other things too. Please bring those in.
Yes, that sense of finding our soul's community and seeing that what we're called on are to learn the inner technologies of peace and love and justice and truth, and then the skillful means to build community, to build new economic systems of fairness, to build, sustainable ecological communities. And, the book is based on the 6-line prayer: soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, peace radiating. And at each level, Steve, as you know, we have that sense of connection between the soul and the whole story, the heart opening. I mean, let's just look at that for a moment. Of course, we have a personal heart. You know, we have personal desires and personal needs. But really, the heart is collective. It's our heart. I want to say to you today, Steve, you and I, how is our heart doing? How is our heart doing? Anybody who's sitting in a group or who's anywhere who's listening to this call, ask yourself, how is our heart doing today? It changes the whole perspective on me, mine, what I need, what I don't need. And it sees the heart as a collective space. That's why, you know, we have one essay in the book about heart opening, and it's about the global heart awakening. It's about that sense that we can experience deeper and deeper senses of connectivity. And really, at the heart of your work, humanities teamwork, I have witnessed from the beginning that authentic sense of we are one, that, you know, again with Deng Deng and the Chinese students, when we were finishing up, I went over to her and I said, I don't know your teacher. It's a woman who, she's a teacher, Deng Deng, and her teacher is also a Chinese woman. I said, I don't know her in the world, but I can tell you, she is my teacher. Your teacher is my teacher. And then immediately Deng Deng said, and your teacher is my teacher. Wow, that is the path forward, where we can greet each other and say and recognize, not, you know, making fictions out of this, but where we can recognize in the other this teaching, even if it's in a format of Zen or Sufism or any other, you know, particular form that it's taking, I can see that it is speaking to me in terms of profound truth. So that sense of the global heart awakening from the personal heart, the personal sense of the soul experiencing the universal, and so on.
Beautiful, James. And even now, you know, you're smiling, we're just breathing into this one heart, this one presence that it's real. It's a shame that we let our eyes create our reality where we see beautiful things, but you know, we could live in separation. And
yeah, we could live in separation, exactly. You know, this person has this ideology, so my heart closes down. We don't share. And the reality is that we can share despite our differences, because the heart itself is that collective source of relationship. So, how's our heart doing today? It's a beautiful question, isn't it?
And this is experiential. I'm feeling into it exactly. I feel what you're describing here, James. And just for all of the viewers too, let's feel into this common heart together, because this is what this is about. James' book, this amazing book, and his work, and our work in Humanities Team and Global Oneness Day. You know, we love a program like this. Is so awesome. The hour races by. It's so fun and inspiring. But ultimately, what it's really about is the call to action James has here in his book, and our Humanities Team call to action, which is to really live this way and to see that the golden rule is actually that we are talking to a part of ourself always. and really live in that place where we then create this so-called heaven on earth that is that's a real possibility in this generation. That's what we're focused on here, huh, James?
Yes, indeed. And the sense that we experience in the work we do, Steve, of the convergence. I know you came to a gathering in Crestone called the Crestone Convergence, but it was that sense that we are able to bring now health, medicine, science of various forms, activism, a whole weaving together of elements that show us that, there is reality in what we say. I mean, the third line of the prayer is light shining. And there's a beautiful short essay after, as you know, the book is constructed with my poetic reflections and then a short essay by somebody. And the essay on light shining is by the hugely accomplished scientist Ervin Laszlo. And Ervin Laszlo talks about this emerging new map that says, that matter itself comes from consciousness, that we are beings whose source and origin is consciousness, and we flow out of consciousness and begin to resonate as subatomic particles. And then those particles build the atoms and the molecules and the whole building blocks of matter. And then we get trapped in matter. We think matter is the only thing that exists, and we build our empires of matter and our matter accomplishments. And yet, this light shining in us is the primordial light of consciousness itself. That's why these technologies of going inward and, contemplating, prayer, contemplation, meditation, give us a connection to that source of the original light of consciousness itself. And wow, if we're not excited about those breakthrough boundaries that are occurring, what more is there to excite us?
That's for sure. Yeah, and boy, we're gonna, we're about 28 minutes into our program, just having a blast, and there's so much more to cover here. Also, thank you, viewers. There's just a lot of stuff here, including Maureen's been bringing in how James, of course, was the leader of IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, and the book gets into just beautiful things that are related to IONS work. There are many comments. I promise we'll get to your comments here, viewers. Thank you. We've got a lot of interaction here. We're going to jump right into your comments here in just a minute. But first, let me just share. James mentioned earlier the key chapters in this book: soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, and peace radiating. And I want to just go into it's beautiful, really. Each chapter is extraordinary. I want to just read from Soul Awakening. And this is just, each of the pages is full of so much inspiration, but I'll read from one of the pages. It says, and then James, if you want to maybe talk about the chapter, it says, soul's essence is so united with Source that it reveals itself to be nothing less than God, seated within us. God remains hidden in our souls until we hear the call to perfect unity, commit to selfless service, and can dare to live into the truly awakened states of divine audacity. So beautiful, James. Yeah, and if you want to talk a little, this is the first chapter in the book, Soul Awakening, and it directly speaks to, you could call it a problem that, the world is trying to solve. The New York Times sharing that, oh my gosh, some of the most successful entrepreneurs have lost their way, and the whole inner dimension and soul, is has been lost in the work. So chapter like this is really, and this, our viewer audience here, we're all on this journey. We would call ourselves conscious. So we've got, on this journey, there are many locations from the very beginning where we're not in touch with our soul at all, to many of us that are really deep in this journey. But as the book discusses, you can just deepen, deepen, deepen. There is no end zone. You can keep going here.
Right, indeed. And that sense of divine audacity is that throughout my life, in war zones, in dialogues between Hutu and Tutsis, Israelis and Palestinians, I have seen the audacity of people who have been persecuted, who have been tortured, who have experienced the most vile forms of degradation, standing up with truth, reconciliation, forgiveness. The audacity of the peacemaker is stunning, that in the midst of fakery and corruption and lies, they will speak the truth and they will live the truth. I remember in Amnesty International, every day, dealing with the horrors of the world, but at the same time, dealing with that spiritual, soulful power in humanity all over the world. And just to take one example, I was remembering this morning Irina Ratushinskaya, imprisoned in the Soviet Union for her poetry. And they allowed her a tiny bar of soap, and every few weeks she was allowed to take a shower. And with her fingernail, she would write parts of her poetry to memorize them, and then wash it off so they wouldn't see it in the soap when she took a shower. And that was her way of, in the midst of incarceration and punishment, being this light for humanity, to say, they will never take the soul out of me, that I will write my poetry anyway. And so many stories like that show us there is a link between contemplation and action. And the other lines of the poem, love flowing, it's the kind of love that we're discovering is also universal. That there's personal love, but there's unconditional love. There is the love for the whole, and to experience as a part the love for the whole is tremendous. And then we have this line, wounds dissolving. And I think we should spend a moment on that, because we have, these problems that are acute. We have problems of people in office lying outrageously, manipulating at gross levels that are shocking, and we have all these wounds to the planet that we mentioned earlier. And yet, what I say is, avoid the snake eyes, hypnotic snake eyes entropy of getting inside the problem. That if you try to get out of the problem by analyzing the problem, you get focused inside, you get trapped inside the problem. You become the opposite to this. Oh, well, if you're there, the solution must be over here. And the problem dictates your response. And so, even in the kind of best sense of positive psychology, we're invited to actually sit inside the solution, sit inside the energies that will dissolve the wound. And so all of this energy that humanity's team is globally feeding the world is energy of love, community, honesty, new economy, all of those elements that we must stand inside those elements, those energies, stand inside the love and the reconciliation, the forgiveness, the understanding that we're all evolutionary learners, and that there is this sense then that the power of unconditional love, the power of that original soulful consciousness is where we stand and put our energies. Yes, we look at the problem and we don't develop false positives by saying, oh, well, it's just a little matter. But no, we recognize the truth. We speak the truth, but we put our energy into the solutions. And I know you're working on incredible solutions for soulful business yourself, Steve.
Yes, we are. And I'll share about that near the end of the program. Thank you. And that's so beautifully expressed. And the thing let me just share a few things. First, James shared that there are these amazing authors that James brings in with commentary on each of the chapters. So in this book, of course, we're talking about soul awakening practice. And I'll just hold this up closer. Boy, this is definitely a book for the library. And so Barbara Marx Hubbard is the commentator on Soul Awakening. Then Michael Singer on Wounds Dissolving, as James mentioned earlier. Urban Laszlo on Light Shining, and then Hopi elder Mona Polaka, I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, on Peace Radiating. So really stunning. And I wanted to mention too, James, I was just thinking as you were sharing, sometimes people use terms like woo-woo and New Age and all of this, but look at your background. James ran, as he mentioned, Amnesty International for the U.S., ran IONS and the SIVA Foundation. I was an entrepreneur in Silicon Valley. I started a couple of two companies that went to 75 million in revenue, and we left our work. Why? Well, we left our work to do something more important, which is this work that we're talking about here now. There's nothing woo-woo about this, or even New Age about it. It's this timeless truth, this ancient truth that we are all one with the divine, each other, and all of life. And I know I visited, as James mentioned, I was at this Crestone Convergence. I visited with James up in Crestone, and wow, talking about a rich life that you live now, huh, James?
Yes, indeed. In a place where there is a lot of spiritual diversity and community, there is ecology. Those elements of spirituality, community, and ecology are a great fit to practice giving birth to the new forms. And we have our struggles. Humans are humans, but there are wonderful initiatives happening in Crestone to bring deeper community resilience together, to protect our extraordinary environment, and to live deeply into our spiritual calling. That's a very powerful mix. And I think Crestone is not alone. It's special. But there are these pockets of solutioning, as I call it, that says, we just have to go out there and practice this. We have to create it. It goes back to that dilemma that you get when you study the problem. The problem can kind of suck you up. The problem's got a lot of entropy. Let's take your energies and, distract you and annoy you and, feed your sense of paranoia or whatever, and take away the energy of building community and sharing spiritual oneness.
Yes, so we have to stay, our invitation is staying focused on what can become the solution, our vision, what we're breathing into and living into, which you discuss so beautifully in your book. And James, I'm going to bring in some questions because there are so many. Thank you, viewers. Wow, we've really got great interaction here. So this is one question. It's from Mary Linda. She says, I love your book, James. It's a daily part of my practice. She says, my question is, are there enough awakened souls now on the planet holding enough higher vibration to help awaken those still so unconscious?
Well, I repeat that sense that I have of evolutionary learners, that, as Barbara Marx Hubbard says in her piece, there is this, it's a Greek word, it's called telos, which means deeper purpose. And she puts telos and eros, the erotic energy, together, telerotic. And she says, you can feel this eros in telos, this sense of connection, dynamic connectivity of purpose, of souls feeling pulled to a kind of deeper creative purpose together, to say, this is not us, what is happening now, and we can be so much more. So I don't know the score at this point in terms of how many, but that experience with my Chinese friends opened me like no experience this year, because one thing it did was break down my own stereotypes. Chinese stereotype of, no, the Chinese are very reserved and difficult to read emotionally and things like that, and constrained. And here, I have 16 millennials from China in my house, weeping their hearts out, hugging, expressing the fact that we are conscious activists together. They're completely deep read on the fact that spirituality is about the birth of a new humanity. It's not about off-planet bliss. We can get the off-planet piece of this, hopefully, but that sense of communing together. And just imagine when I ask that question, how's our heart doing today? And think of those pockets and people across the planet, in rainforests, on mountains, in communities, in cities. They're building, my Chinese friends are building a wonderful center in Shanghai, that there is this emergence. And we're like midwives at the emergence, saying, a little hard, push a little harder, a little deeper. It's coming. We are birthing. We are in that birthing process. And let's not get distracted by the howling. We have this word in Irish, you've probably heard of it, banshee. Banshee is a howling ghost that comes, when things are unraveling. We've got to take our attention off that and build, what is possible. And that's last line of the prayer, peace radiating. There's this sense of radiating peace. Peace is dynamic. It's not passive. Peace is receptive. It deeply hears the others. It meets them. It meets them in that common state. It says, I am listening with all my being. I am capacitated to enter deep communion with you and to resolve conflicts that have gone haywire. But that sense of goes back to that element of peace that says, in my being there is a soul that is pure and natural. It's an essential part of my being, and I can be at peace knowing that I can rest in the truth of who I am, and then go out and share that peace. I saw a comment by Avon Mattison. She's on the call today. And, here's a woman who helped lead the whole movement towards International Day of Peace, a great visionary, a peacemaker in our time. And she is a paragon of living the inner life of peace and then radiating. Let's just feel that one more time. Peace radiance. The peace radiance is what I would love to share with you today. The heart of peace radiance, and feel that peace is on the move and is much more dynamic than we ever imagined.
Yes, it is. And it's being birthed, as you mentioned, into the world in a big way. James, thank you. And Avon, who James just mentioned, says, "Dearest James, you embody peace as our essential nature being and a dynamic awakening evolutionary process, a vow of pure love and gratitude to you." So that's from Avon. And I'll bring in also...
I'll say to Avon, your teacher is my teacher.
Yeah. Amen. Yes, we are all one. And then Lynn and other people, there are quite a number of comments here, James, that are speaking, Lynn Mystic, that are sharing, all of these great challenges in the world, even referencing Michael Moore's movie, Where to Invade Next, and other people that are bringing in, the homeless, these things that are so troubling as we look out in the world. You've been commenting on these, James, but let's, this maybe can lead us into, as you comment on this, maybe it can lead us into this soul awakening prayer that we wanted to bring into this program, because it, I think one of your themes is we can kind of get sucked into into the aggravation and challenge and horror of the problem, as opposed to being the alchemist that heals the problem. But this I know is part of your practice. But James, can you just talk to this a little bit, and then let's go into this beautiful soul awakening prayer that you've created.
Great. Well, that's a wonderful opportunity. Yes, that there are 6 lines to the prayer, and it's repeated 4 times. And the first time we say it for ourselves. But the second time we do it, it's for those who are on this call, those who are with us, the soul group that's gathered today, wherever you have gathered, that soul group. And then the third time is for all of our families, all of our connections. Imagine that soul group of our heart moving out into the world. And then finally, the last time we say it for all beings and for all humanity. So here goes. First time, as I say the words, if you want to say them along or just listen in silence, for yourself. Soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, peace radiating. And now, for this soul group today on this call, and anybody who watches this program, anybody who's gathered, for our soul group, soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, peace radiating. And now see this energy, this capacity of our soul group and all of our families and connections moving through that question that was asked about how many. Just think of all the manys that are connected through us, and through them we say soul awakening, heart opening, light shining, love flowing, wounds dissolving, peace radiating, and then finally, our vision of all of humanity, for all beings at this time, whatever the depth of our wounds, however deep our unhealth or our challenges are, we call out that truth, soul awakening on planet Earth, heart opening across the globe, light shining in all beings, love flowing, wounds dissolving everywhere, peace radiating.
Oh, boy, let's just breathe into that here for a moment. Just astounding. Yeah, beautiful. And that just grounds us and that helps us to commune with the spirit that we are a part of, and to ground us in that, in the beauty and essence and blessing of spirit, and then to just go out in the world in a beautiful way. You've several times, James, come back to that this isn't about New Age bypass, that it's about really, and you always emphasize about yourself, a mystic and an activist. The mystic, that's the inner, and then that's informing the outer, the activist, and in this way, being an alchemist, really being a force for good. It brings us back to this issue of, with all of the challenge and injustice in the world, what is the thing that we can best focus on? I think that's what your book is about, how we can be the mystic and the activist both. Maybe we can just come back to that question that many people are bringing in of, with all the challenges in the world, what is ours to do?
Right. Doobie doobie doo. That sense of make sure you are finding yourself, make sure you are finding your own beautiful true nature, and at the same time taking that out. I picked up something this morning that I had written a few years ago, and it just feels relevant to the time. It's one sentence, but I'd like to read it to you.
Please, yeah.
When you realize that the numbness of living so many half-truths is greater than the pain you may endure in trying to live your truth, you willingly face the pain. So my work, having seen so much suffering on the planet, is to face the pain and to go through it rather than to live the half-truths. And what the mystic discovers in facing the pain is that the pain has served to do its part of the job in awakening, and that it's not the end of the story. Pain is not the end of the story, but it's a transitional part. Let me read that sentence one more time. When you realize that the numbness of living so many half-truths is greater than the pain you may endure in trying to live your whole truth, you willingly face the pain. And when you realize that you must change, even if no one else around you is ready for change, you dare to lead. And that's that divine audacity that we were talking about.
Yeah, boy, it's a birthing process, isn't it? There's incredible pain, but as you're mentioning, you're welcoming it because you know what it's bringing on. Yes. Yeah. Beautiful. Wow. Well, James, how can people follow your work, and any calls to action here as we close? It's so wonderful having you here with us. I love, this has been mentioned here by viewers, you certainly embody your message, and it's such a beautiful message.
Well, I encourage people to explore the practice, explore the question, how is our heart today? How is our heart doing? When you meet someone, ask that question, how is our heart doing? And our heart is challenged. Our heart is facing enormous challenges. But once we step into that point of oneness, that the heart is shared, that there is a global heart, there is an infinite heart awaiting us, then we can begin that journey with leaving my heart. And my heart's going to be okay. Our heart that we have to grow. Our heart we grow together as a global heart awakens. And it's such a privilege to have a conversation with you, Steve, the wonderful organization you lead. Humanity is better off for your work.
Well, thank you. Boy, we've all been called to it. You know, the inner nudge that brought us here. We know brought you to your amazing work, James, and it's so extraordinary to have you with us. And jamesod.com, and of course, OD is ODEA. So jamesodea.com. Is that right, James? Is that one of the websites?
Yes.
People can go to follow James' work. So what a brother and an awakening and just as a leader in this whole birthing process and creating alchemy for this world that's in need. So thank you. I'm going to come back and thank you a bunch more, James, but that'll at least get us started here. So let me just share a few things, just some announcements here. Humanities Team is a key member, as James mentioned, of the Conscious Business Alliance. There are 4 NGOs that came together, Humanities Team based here in the US, the Club of Budapest based in Europe, the Cultivating Peace Foundation based in Japan, and then the Fowler Center for Business as an agent of public benefit, the Case Western Reserve University. Together we created a Conscious Business Declaration that talks about just what James and I are sharing here, really bringing spirit into business with this whole interior focus where we're creating spirit or sacred guided collaboration and decision making that's all for the well-being of the community and the planet and life and all the workers, where it's about, yes, there's financial prosperity, but there's so much more prosperity that's created through conscious business. And if that resonates with you, I invite you to go to consciousbusinessdeclaration.org. You can see on the screen, actually, there's the declaration. If you get an inner yes when you read that, we invite you to sign it and invite your coworkers and friends to sign it as well. Business is a huge agent out on the planet, and let's make it a force for good, an agent for positive change. That's what this whole Conscious Business Declaration is about. As well, we created something called a Oneness Declaration. We created it back in 2007, and it just talks about all of these themes that James and I have been exploring and sharing, that we are all one with the divine, each other, and all of life. We're going to put a link also in the window here for this one and invite you to read it. Again, if you get an inner yes, invite you to read it, sign it, invite your friends to sign it. What this is doing, this is what created Global Oneness Day. We got over 50,000 signatures back in 2010 here in the Oneness Declaration. We're now driving for 100,000 signatures so we can go back to the United Nations and ask the United Nations to endorse and support a Global Oneness Day. So thank you for your support for these 2 declarations. Upcoming programs that you don't want to miss. On Thursday, December 14th, so that's a week from today, 9 o'clock Pacific time, we're doing a program with Pierre Pradervan. He wrote this amazing book called The Gentle Art of Blessing. Also on YouTube, you can click on Gentle Art of Blessing. It'll make you cry watching this video that was made from the book. Pierre's going to talk about the process for blessing the world and ourselves each day to further the awakening and shift that's occurring at this time in the Earth's evolution, what my discussion with James is about here. Then in January, we're going to take a little break here over the holidays. At the beginning of January, we're doing a program with William Ury, who created the Abraham Path Initiative. He also wrote this incredible book called Getting to Yes. And then a week later, Marilyn Tam, who was the CEO of Aveda and the president of Reebok. And then a week after that, a program with Lance Secretan. He was the CEO of Manpower. Marilyn Tam and Lance Secretan are part of the faculty of this Conscious Business Academy that we've created, where we're training and certifying conscious business change agents, CBCAs. So be sure to tune into those programs. If you go to livingin1.com, you can see all of the coming speakers. You can register. All the programs are free. If you miss the live program, we send you a link so you can catch these remarkable interviews. They're just like this amazing interview here with James O.D. today. Our work is focused on living in oneness. I want to just share about something called Community Circle that we created a few years ago. It's only $10 a month. We intentionally priced it nominally so that all of the people around the world that are involved in this process of living in oneness can come together as kind of a virtual, intentional community where we're in touch with leaders like yourself all over the world through this kind of programming. There's also a book club. There's a Zoom program like this for people that are in Community Circle a couple times a month. They come together to share challenges and successes in their journey. There also are over 380 programs like this, some in video, some in audio format, that you gain access to anytime, anywhere for your friends and family. So all of that for $10 a month. You can go to humanitiesteam.org and scroll down to the rectangle that says Community Circle, and you can click on it to learn more. And we're also placing a link in the window. Okay, I'm going to come back and again, thank our guest today, James O.D. Just such a privilege and pleasure, James, to be with you. And I look forward to having you back here with us again soon. Well, an extraordinary program. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Steve. Your teacher is my teacher. Your God is my God.
Yeah, amen and amen, brother. And I love just feeling into your heart energy and wisdom today, James. Such a treat. I'm sure I'm giving voice to our viewers. There's a lot of comments here still coming in. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Let me also thank just these male and female angels that make this program possible. Garth Catterall is the person that leads this programming each week. Dee Meyer is here. Christine Glenn is often here. Nanette Kennedy, Caroline Chang, different people that will help Garth with the programming. And then saving the best for last. Thank you to each of you. Thanks for making it a priority to be here with us for this important programming each week. And as we close, I want to just invite all of us to really live as one. Of course, this is ultimate reality. Each of us are going to do this in our own way. But when we do this, and especially when we bring in like soul awakening practice, we draw in this whole presence, peace, and power that are our true essence. Okay, we'll see you next Thursday, December 14th, when we're back on the air with Pierre Pradardhan. And my co-host for that program is Anna Marie Pieterse. And she's out of Pretoria, South Africa. We're going to come in live for that programming. So thanks a bunch. And thank you, James. Thanks, Garth. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next week. Take care.